And what ended up happening as a result of that was I just started peeing people off. Everybody was like, you're really defeatist, you're really alarmist, you're riling us up, there's nothing going to happen to the dollar, you're under illusions, you're deluded.
Yeah,
I got a lot of this. I got a lot of this kind of stuff.
You go into something with a certain expectation, thinking it's going to be like this or like that.
The dollar's about to crash. The economy is about to change. We are about to have a revolution. We are about to walk into a multipolar world. South Africa is going to be a large part of that, right? Things are about to change. We are probably going to get a cultural shift in how men feel about themselves as well, because men are so emasculated right now. They're so castrated right now. They're about to get their masculinity back on some level, right? When I was writing all these posts on Facebook, and I'm constantly writing these posts and stuff, constantly talking about these things, you expect the Muslims that would understand that the best, and they were the ones that were resisting it the most.
The whole function of inflation is based on the fact that the money is at interest. So they raise the interest rate and they lower the interest rate. They increase the amount of money in circulation, they decrease the amount of circulation, but it's all a function of interest. It's all a function of usury. It's a function of riba. My two guiding principles are that the conversations are spontaneous and authentic. So as long as what we're talking about is authentic and it's a spontaneous, it's not scripted, we're not going in a certain direction, we let the conversation guide us, you know. And even the fact that I'm here now, sitting, having this conversation with you, I mean, it's been something that's been happening for a long time. Like, so many people have mentioned your name right back to when you interviewed Sheikh Umar. Because when you did that, I think I just moved out of Sheikh Abdul's house.
Right.
And I went for lunch, and he was mentioning, you have to watch this video. It's very important to watch this video. And I think he put it up on his website as well.
Yeah, he put it up on his YouTube. Yeah, I did meet him. I met him September of 2017. So I met him for about an hour.
Sheikh Abdul I'm talking about. Yeah. Oh, wow. In France or in South
in Paris.
Africa?
So I know he went to Paris, and then he stayed a while, and then he went back.
Yeah.
And then in that little window, that's when I met him.
Amazing. How was your meeting?
Yeah. Phenomenal. Well, actually, the actual meeting itself at the time, and I obviously don't intend disrespect when I say this. It'll make sense in a second. The meeting itself was quite underwhelming at the time,
right?
Because he had been really built up as a persona and everything. But afterwards, like when I got back to the apartment, and then that you start to feel there's like an inward beauty you feel, and you feel clean, and and then the things that he said, and they start to affect you. So that's when you start to understand this is a man of Allah. At the time, it doesn't hit you straight away. And it's a couple of people had said to me that that's usually how it goes. It just, the meeting itself, it's afterwards, the effect it has on you afterwards. And even with Sheikh Umar, it was quite similar. Even when I met him as well.
Right. Well, I think it's like that with. It's like that with everything that you have an expectation about. You go into something with a certain expectation, thinking it's going to be like this or like that, and then you're like, oh, it wasn't like that. But you're maybe not aware of what's actually happening. So tell me, are you a life coach?
No. I have experience in. I do have some experience in. I am qualified somewhat in like trauma healing, those kind of things. So I can help people with trauma healing. I've done a lot for myself as well. But the work that I was actually doing was actually business strategy. So it was just looking at businesses, small businesses only. So I don't do like corporate. I don't do corporate big business. I don't even do big startups. I was just doing this. I was doing small everyday businesses. Part of that does require you to coach the founder, just helping them kind of overcome their the doubts and their fears and all that kind of stuff. But it's mostly conversational. It's not like a structured kind of approach. There's no kind of like whole kind of life coaching kind of structure or anything to it. Mostly it was just finding ways to help their business.
Right. So
Well, what are you doing? Are you doing this full time, or do you do something else? Or
This is amazing.
yeah, it
This
was
is
written.
this.
That was written quite a while ago. Sheikh Abdul Qadir's read that book, by the way.
Well, you know what's really interesting is I am 95% sure that this is Sheikh Abdul Qadir's copy.
Really,
I
it
am.
might be.
I'm not 100% sure because I
It might.
think he gave it to my brother. And
Right,
I had a box of books that my brother had left when he left Cape Town.
right.
And now I
Because I did give him. Is it signed? Because I gave him a signed copy as well. On the first page, if you see it on the first page.
no. But did you give
Okay,
him
so
more than
he's
one
kept
copy?
he's kept the signed one and then given this one. That's interesting.
Did you give him a number of copies?
No, so what happened was I took the book with me when I was there. I didn't know he even knew about my book. I didn't, and then he must have found out about my book about 3 days earlier. And by the time I got there, he'd already read the book before I'd even got there. That's how quickly he read it.
Oh
And I
yeah.
walked in and I presented him a copy, and my book was already on the table. So
Master move.
yeah,
Amazing, amazing. Well, this
yeah,
this was in a box of books that my brother had left in his apartment. So when I went to just clear
right.
everything out, I took all the books.
Okay,
And they've just been
right.
sitting in my storeroom for
Oh,
however long. Now, your name's come up a number of times. Dr. Humaira mentioned you. Jawad mentioned you a number of times. Abriz mentioned you.
Breeze was here yesterday.
Oh, is it? Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. And who else mentioned? A couple of people. And then I posted that video online, and then you reposted it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy. Then I'm like moving house, packing all these boxes, whatever, and sorting out all the books on my shelves. And this book turned up, and I'm like, Khuram Malik again. This guy, he's like chasing me from the unseen. So I'm like, okay, let me just reach out to you. And here we are. And it's interesting that it's happening at the same time as all of these kind of other things that are happening in the world, in my life, in my curiosity. In particular, this recent BBC interview with Andrew Tate. And there's just a lot of things that are kind of moving in the background, which I think are very much in line with kind of the subject matter that we're talking about. Plus, I had an very interesting conversation with Sheikh Umar. And I was
I
asking
did listen
him,
to that one. That was about a year ago, wasn't it?
No. I'm talking about like a personal conversation
Oh,
that
okay.
I just
All right.
phoned him last week because I had this question on my mind, and I was like, and I was like, Sheikh Umar, let me phone Sheikh Umar, and I had a long conversation with him, and he answered the specific question in detail, and then what came out of it is that he was saying you've got to be a voice piece for. I mean, he used the kind of economic revolution. And I don't really like the term revolution because I think it's a bit too heated. But he was basically talking about the young people today. They want to know about inflation. They want to know about these things. They want they're they're not rigid in their ways. They're involved in cryptocurrencies. They're involved in different means of transactions. And so he mentioned that thing, and that was. That sparked my curiosity, and I'm like, okay, yes, I want to go down that route of money and talk to,
Well, I mean,
the
that's
new
literally
generation.
what I'm doing here. My idea was money, masculinity, and medicine. I wanted to talk about those three things.
Okay.
I've ended up only talking about money so far. I've not even had a chance to have a conversation about masculinity or have a conversation about medicine. I've had a couple of guests that have come in. Breeze actually came in and spoke about masculinity yesterday. It was an incidental conversation. So I think that was the first time we've kind of had that conversation about masculinity yesterday. And that won't be out for a month. And then medicine, I've had one doctor come in and speak about medicine, but I haven't had a chance to do my own commentary on medicine. So the way that I started was when the pandemic started, the kind of like 2-3 years before the pandemic started, for me, it was a lot of learning. It was just learning about muamalat, learning about qirad, learning about inflation and the dinar and the dirham and the riba and the fractional reserve banking. And it was kind of all kind of in hibernation, you could say, like all underground, kind of just learning. And then I remember the week the pandemic hit, as in when the week we went into lockdown. I spoke to Sheikh Omar on the phone, and I'm telling you, like when he spoke to me on the phone, it was like a blue bolt of lightning went through my body. Like that's how it felt. Like a physical bolt of lightning is what it felt like. And he was like, talk to the people, teach the people, tell them the things, tell them what they need to know, mention the name of Allah, talk to the people. He kept saying that to me. And he was saying it, and it was very inspiring, but I didn't know what to do with that information. And then I think about a day later, I actually started writing a series of posts on Facebook talking about, okay, you know, the inflation's coming and the world is changing and this is happening and that's happening and all these other things. And what ended up happening as a result of that was I just started peeing people off. Everybody was like, you're really defeatist, you're really alarmist, you're riling us up, there's nothing going to happen to the dollar, you're under illusions, you're deluded. I got a lot of this. I got a lot of this kind of stuff. And then I think I probably did it for like maybe about a year or so. And then I started slowing down, and then I moved house, and then I had a kid and all this. I just got kind of busy with all those things. And then about 3 years, I would say at the beginning of this year, I started getting these voices coming back to me and people saying to me, "Oh, do you know if the dollar crashes, which currency do you think will be more dominant? Do you think that if we really work really, really hard, do you think that that's not going to have any effect on our business because the economy is crashing? You know, so all the things that I've been saying 3 years ago, finally now people were starting to have those realizations, but it's taken 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, you know what? Now it's time to kind of go a bit all out, and it's time for me. I can now kind of speak a bit more openly, and let's just get this out there now. That's how it basically came about.
Who do you want to speak to in particular?
I think at the moment I'm really speaking to the Muslims, really. But if there's if there's other people that aren't Muslims that kind of want to benefit from them, then fine. That's kind of how I'm doing things at the moment.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, I speak. I've never been shy about speaking about the Deen, even at school. So like I was at an all boys boarding school in Scotland.
Okay.
I was the only Muslim kid in my year. I think there were 3 Muslim boys in the entire school.
That sounds similar to my experience. There was 6 Muslim kids in the entire school, of which there were maybe 3 or 4 boys.
Right.
Yeah,
and
12 kids.
I would pray in the common room.
Wow.
And it was actually quite cool because we were always with each other, like day in, day out, boarding school, right? And so after once I was in the middle school, I would pray in the common room, and people would come running in shouting whatever, and they'd be like, "Oh no, shh, Abdullah's praying. Just wait till he's finished." And it was just it was part of life. It was like, oh yeah. And I remember once my house, I was at my desk or behind my desk, and I was doing the prayer. And my housemaster walks in and starts talking to me. And obviously, I'm doing the prayer, so I'm not replying to him. And he was getting so angry, really, really angry, shouting at me, "Abdallah, speak to me, otherwise detention, whatever." And I was just continuing to do my prayer, completely ignoring him, obviously. And then I came
to be honest, I've not been that confident. I did get a job. When I got a job, IT job, they used to let me pray in the server room. So they used to be I'd go into this room and just be full of servers that run the entire network for 800 staff. And I would go and pray in there. And sometimes they'd walk in and then go, "Oh, sorry," somebody would walk in to come and check a server or something. But they were quite good about it. But I didn't like praying in front of them. I had a friend who's got a very successful startup in the US, and we and him would have these kind of catch-up kind of accountability meetings together once a week, like a mastermind kind of thing when it was all kind of in fashion. And then I'd kind of take a break about halfway because it'd be Maghrib time or something and go and pray under the stairs. And he would say to me, "Can I come and watch? Can I come and watch you pray?" He was always quite fascinated with that. And I remember when I had a job in Cambridge, I was fasting, and then they'd kind of help facilitate the fast and all that. But I've not been that confident to kind of just pray anywhere. I've got friends, they will just, stop and pray on the road. Or go to some conference and just go and pray by the side. I get more nervous about those kind of things. I get quite nervous about what the response is going to be and things. But I definitely admire people that can just stop and pray anywhere. Definitely.
Well, for me, it was never really. I think just the way I was raised, like my parents were not strict at all. They gave us a lot of flexibility to do whatever we wanted to do. But in my household, like doing the prayer was a big deal. It was like, you did the prayer. Do whatever else, just make sure you do the prayer. Like, because that's followed, you know, that's part, that's... And I don't know, I just guess the way I was raised, I was never afraid to do the prayer. I didn't care what anybody else thought either. Good. It was just like, I'm Muslim. Maybe it's also got to do with the fact that my father became Muslim. So my father's side of the family, I mean, that's white English, and you know, I did the prayer at my grandmother's house, no problem, you know. So maybe it's also got to do with that like I was
you get
exposed
to, like you're not getting a reaction, so you kind of just get comfortable with it. I mean, I was raised culturally religious, you know, so it's Pakistani household, and you actually get criticized for praying. I remember going to Pakistan when I was like, how old was I? I can't remember, 21, 22, and just getting nothing but criticism. Oh, he prays. Oh, he's got a beard. Why does he do that? Why does he pray? You know, it's like it's such a big deal. Like it's so backward in that way. And then even like I remember when I was working in my dad's computer shop, and then on the customers would come in, and I'd be working in the back room building PCs. And then I'd be praying in there because I'd take a break to pray, and my dad would get embarrassed, and then he wouldn't know what to say to the customer. So I've kind of just absorbed all the embarrassment around it. You know, I think your environment does make a big difference.
Oh, massively, massively.
But
I was just thinking about it because it was never really like doing it to be religious or something. It was just like it was instilled in me from a
you
kid.
just do it because you want to do it.
Yeah. And then I remember. And I mean, alhamdulillah, I have to say it's been a big blessing because lots of my friends, you know, guys that would pray when they were young and then they went through a period where they didn't pray or whatever. Like for me, even through like my wild days and everything, that was the one thing I always held to is always you pray 5 times a day and you fast Ramadan. You know, like whatever else you're going to do, whatever other nonsense you're catching on, like
make sure you do that still.
Make sure you don't go 24 hours without catching up. I mean, even if you're gonna miss your prayers or whatever, just like, and that's something I've always held to, and alhamdulillah, you know,
makes a big difference to your life, I think.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful to my parents for having, you know, put that into me, and may I put that into my children, inshallah. So good. Yeah, man, but that's on that subject. But yeah, no, I was just wanted to ask you, like, on that subject of whether we paint this in a Muslim light or keep it neutral.
Fine. Just kind of keep it because just let it just flow naturally.
Everything that I'm talking about in my course, I have not talked about it through the lens of Islam, but it's all the deen. I mean, you know,
the thing for me is like, I'll tell you, like I did a YouTube video and then I took a snippet of it, right? And I take snippets of those and I put them on Instagram and I put them on TikTok. And in one of those snippets, I actually said, I can't remember what I was talking about, but I said something to do with like, I can't remember what the specific video was about, but it's something to do with like, even the Islamic banks are contributing to inflation. I think it was to do with fractional reserve banking, and that even Islamic banks actually practice fractional reserve banking, which then just effectively makes them haram, right? So it was a little snippet that was basically explaining that. And the interesting thing was, out of all the comments that I got, because on TikTok I've got non-Muslim and Muslim followers, right? They argue with me about stuff. You get some really nasty comments. They argue with me about stuff. Yeah. And the only person that actually criticized the video was a Muslim guy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I constantly get with the community, is that it actually the people that the dollar's about to crash, the economy is about to change. We are about to have a revolution. We are about to walk into a multipolar world. South Africa is going to be a large part of that, right? Things are about to change. We are probably going to get a cultural shift in how men feel about themselves as well, because men are so emasculated right now. They're so castrated right now. They're about to get their masculinity back on some level, right? But the people, and when I was writing all these posts on Facebook, and I'm constantly writing these posts and stuff, constantly talking about these things, you expect the Muslims that would understand that the best. And they were the ones that were resisting it the most. Actually, non-Muslims resist this stuff less than Muslims do.
Now, I've got a question for you. Is Islamic banking as a term not an oxymoron?
It is. It absolutely is. There's no such thing as Islamic banking.
But that's my whole position.
You can't say, right, well, actually, what we're going to do is you put the money in the bank and we're going to steal that money and we're going to go and put it somewhere else. So we're going to perform legalized theft. And actually, what we're going to do is we're going to contribute to inflation, directly contribute to it. We're going to give you the tools. We're going to give you the thing that's actually going to make you contribute to inflation directly. So we're going to make your life a lot harder long term. We're going to make it impossible for your children to buy a house. But what we're doing is Islamic. There's no such thing.
Well, my thing is that if you go back before even Islamic banking, right, and the term Islamic banking, which I do believe is a complete oxymoron, if you want to call it the best thing that you can possibly do in the current situation as Muslims with your banking, okay. But if you're going to brand it as Islamic, you cannot brand it Islamic simply because, and before you even go into the workings of it, the money which you are using to transact in your Islamic banking is haram. Because if you go right back to it, the money itself is haram. Why? Because the money is not even, it's not that it's not worth anything. It's that all currency today, whether you're in America and using the dollar, you're in South Africa and using the rand, you're in Europe using the euro, you're in the United Kingdom using the pound, you're in the Emirates using the Emirati dirham, the way that money is structured today is firstly based on fractional reserve banking, but secondly, it's not even a debt, it's the deficit of a debt denominated into your piece of paper. Yeah, which you're chasing after. So the money itself is at interest. And people, you know, I say this to people, and people are like, no, that can't be, that it doesn't make sense, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, well, then why, when you look at the news and you're feeling the pain of inflation, right? Why is it on the news that all the economists are talking about the interest rate? Because the money, the whole function of inflation is based on the fact that the money is at interest. So they raise the interest rate and they lower the interest rate. They increase the amount of money in circulation. They decrease the amount of circulation. But it's all a function of interest. It's all a function of usury. It's a function of riba.
Before we continue on this video, I just want to invite you to my Discord community. Look, the world has changed. And it is changing still. And on my Discord, which is a simple mobile app that you can use, you can stay in touch with other like-minded people like me who are staying informed of the things that are happening around the world that are going to affect our daily lives very, very soon. So come and join me on my Discord community and let's grow together and let's navigate this changing world order together.
Which makes the money itself haram. Now, if you go back to Imam Malik, rahimahullah, who was a great legalist of the second or third generation after the Prophet ﷺ, and he said that usury, riba, is forbidden down to a blade of grass. Yeah. So if there's a blade of grass of increase, and a blade of grass is worth nothing, but if there's a blade of grass of increase in the transaction, then it is riba, it is haram. Now, our money system is well beyond the blade of grass, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Well, I don't want to get onto crypto yet.
It's even worse. Way, way, way worse. You know, this is the world that we're living in. But this is the thing. Like, you will find that you can have this conversation. Even this conversation, you will find it easier to have this conversation with a non-Muslim than with a Muslim. That's been my experience constantly for the last few years.
Right. Now, I was having a conversation with my cousin the other night, just over the phone, because I wanted to, like, you know, he's a successful, how do I put it? I mean, he's a pharmaceutical salesman, right? He moves across the country selling pharmaceuticals to doctors. He's very good at it. He makes a lot of money. He lives a very comfortable life, so to speak. Drives a nice car, has a beautiful house, beautiful wife, lovely daughter, you know, Alhamdulillah,
He's got it all
mashallah.
going on, basically.
Right, mashallah, you know, I'm very happy for him. I love him, you know, and he's doing very well. And I'm having a conversation with him, and I was just chatting to him. I was like, you know, somebody, you know, I'm talking to your. I said to him straight. I said, you are my target audience. You know, young Muslim man, married, got a kid. What do you want to hear about? And he said to me, he said, you know what? We had a long conversation. At the end of it, it came to the point where he said, you know, today, you're born, you go out to school to get an education, right? And he even said, if you can even call that an education, right? At school, you know, the British state school system, so that you can go to university and get a degree so you can get a job. But with your degree, you're also getting a massive student loan. So as soon as you're coming out of university, you're already in debt. So you have to get a job, right? So you have to get a job to start paying back your student loan, right? At interest. Now you get your job, you're doing okay, you're paying off your installments, whatever. You know, now you meet the lady of your life. Cool, right? Now you get married. Now you've got a kid. So not only do you need a house...
You first you need to pay for the wedding. If you're an Asian
yeah, of course, right?
You've got to pay 20, 30, 40K for the wedding first.
Yeah, of course. And if you don't, then you've got the backlash of the family and whatnot, and that's impossible,
and
right?
that costs a huge amount of money. You know, weddings are costing... They used to cost about 20K. They're now costing 40 to 60K in pounds. So about 100K in dollars. Stupid money. Stupid money.
So you've taken out a loan now to pay for your wedding, which you've got to pay off. So you're starting your married life already on the back foot with a double debt. Also, your wife's most likely, she's also got her student loan that she's still paying off.
Yeah. And then you pay for the honeymoon with your credit card.
Right. Now you've got to take a credit card, which is all at interest, right?
Yeah. And now your entire house out with on finance, right down to the mattress. I know people who've got even their mattresses on finance.
Right. And then he's going through this thing and he's telling me all of this, and I'm like, yeah, right. And now you've got some kids. Now you've got to pay for nappies. Now you've got to get a bigger house. Now you need a mortgage. Now you need a second car. You need more car another car finance, whatever. Right. Then you spend your life accumulating things in order to give your children the best that you can give them, which is in itself noble. And then you die. And the state takes 50%. You know? And I'm like, how can you tell me? Right, now, if you take that example, which is the status quo, that is the way it is for most people today, right? Unless you hit it, you smash it, and you make a massive amount of money and you can clear your debts, which the reality is, even if you make a massive amount of money, you're just going to leverage yourself to a bigger degree. You know, now you're taking out, instead of car finance, you're taking out boat finance and plane finance, etc., you know, and taking a mortgage on a palace rather than an apartment.
Because the habit is finance. The habit is to do everything in a debt-driven way. It's a debt-driven economy. That's the problem.
Right. Now, if you are participating in that, you cannot tell me that you're not a slave, because you are a slave to the financer. This is the
argument that I'm having with everybody. This is the exact argument that I'm having. So you contrast that to the example of the life that you've given of today. You contrast that and go back 100 years. So go back to something like 1908. In 1908, you had a guy who would do and this is not to put anybody down, but would do a basic job. So he would just do an everyday kind of a job, right? So maybe he's a shopkeeper, or maybe he's a lumberjack or whatever. It's a low pay, it's just an average wage kind of, minimum wage kind of job, right?
Yeah.
On that salary, one guy would be able to, he'd work 2.5 days a week, right? So Monday through till maybe midday Wednesday. And then Thursday he would probably do stuff around the house, fix the house up and all that kind of stuff. And then Friday he would probably do grocery shopping. And then Saturday he would spend a day with his kids and take them to the park and everything. And then Sunday he would give that to the church, right? He's only working 2.5 days a week. And on that single salary of minimum wage, he could raise 6 children and look after his ailing parents, all in the same house. Yeah. You contrast that today to what you're saying today. One guy, not even on forget a minimum wage, a guy on a decent salary, a pharmaceutical rep, a sales guy, an investment banker or whatever, earning 50, 60K a year, He can't even afford to look after himself in an apartment, let alone a wife and a kid.
Well, this is
It
what
just
you see.
cannot be
This
done.
is now you've gone back to 1908. Personally, I can go back to my grandfather, and my grandfather
Yeah, I
bought.
mean, I could go back to my granddad as well.
Do you know what I mean? And you don't even have to go that far back. But if you look, let's just take the example of my nana. You know, my mother's
Yeah,
father. He bought a house in, I think it was St John's Wood. It was like one of those really central parts of London, right? In the
yeah,
1960s. And then he decided to move to Leeds. So he
yeah.
sold his house in London and he moved to Leeds, right? Now, my grandfather came, you know, is the famous story, I came to this country with
Yeah.
£5, you know, and he did.
Oh,
He
yes.
literally did.
Yeah.
You know, he came here with nothing and he built himself up and
Yeah.
in like,
Yeah.
from a
You got
very,
to work
like,
hard. You got to have a hunger. You just
yeah,
work hard, and everything Allah open door for you.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's true, you know, and
Yeah.
he did work hard and in 5, 7 years he could buy a house in central London back
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
right? Now that's impossible. It doesn't matter how,
I
not
when I was
impossible,
nine,
but you, from a like a government job, you
it's
cannot
just
buy
not
a house in
doable.
central London.
When I was 19 years old, right, I was working 70 hours a week, and I was studying at the same time. I was doing stupid hours, right? And I was working so hard. By the time I got to 25, I completely burned out. That's how hard I was working, and I
Yeah.
still have nothing to show for it. And you speak to my daddy, so my dad's mom. She used to say to me, she used to tell me stories all the time. This is when she was well. Unfortunately, she has dementia now. But she used to say to me, she used to go, I remember when I was a kid, like, I don't know, maybe like 17 or 18. And she would say, your dada, your grandfather, he was a bus conductor and he didn't used to work that much, and he never used to listen to me, so I used to tell him what to do. And she used to say he used to come home and he used to take half his salary and I used to put it in an envelope. And she goes, and then she always used to say to me, just save, always save your money, always save your money. She always used to say to me, just save your money. And she said, I saved the money, and within 6 months I went and bought this house. And then 6 months later I bought another house, and joined the two houses together. So all you got to do is just save your money. Why don't you do that? Why don't you save your money? And I'm like, yes, grandma, okay. She bought a house for 2 grand. I could never do that. No matter how hard I work, I can't even save. You literally just hand to mouth all the time. You're literally a hamster on a wheel.
Which is what I, so
It just
this is
can't be
what
done anymore.
so I say to our generation and the young and the next generation is like, if you look at the trajectory from our grandparents to our parents to us in this situation, you know, and I know you have children, I have children. It's like, what are they going to experience? You know, there's a trajectory, there's a motion of events that's happening. Now, we can take that back 300-400 years, and you can look at the full picture, which I do unpack in my course. You know, in the second section of the course, I do exactly that. I take it all the way back to the 1600s in Europe, and I show how the currency that we use today is invented, how it came about, who was behind it, how they took control, how they financed the ailing monarchies, how they then, backing the monarchies, then caused all of the infighting in Europe, which eventually led up to the First and Second World Wars, which were massively catastrophic, right? And then I say the final thing, which is that with the First and Second World Wars, what people forget about is that the vast majority of Europe was destroyed, like outwardly
Decimated.
destroyed. You know, cities were razed to the ground. Who was paying for the construction? Who was financing the construction? And then you take that back and say, who was financing the military machine? And if you do your research, you will find that it's the same banking families that were financing the English, that were financing the French, that were financing the Germans, that were financing the Russians, that were
They're doing the
financing
same thing right now.
right? And this is a trajectory which goes all the way back to the 1600s. And it was those same families that were financing the colonial conquest. It was the same families that were backing the British East India Company. It was the same families that were backing the Dutch East India Company. So when you look at all the horrors that happened in India, when you look at all the horrors that happened out in Indonesia and in the Philippines, you look at all the horrors that happened anywhere that there was some colonial expansion.
Banking system.
That's my thing. Who was financing it? Who was gaining from this experience?
Yeah, and they deliberately wanted to. They deliberately wanted to destroy the family unit. I don't think anybody. There's this. There's a movie that's on. You can actually watch it on YouTube about Bediüzzaman Said Nursi. He was a scholar, right? He
Right.
was a well-known scholar right at the end of the Ottoman Empire, at the fall of the Ottoman Empire. And he had this really famous speech that he gave an address into the universities, and then he had this, the state went after him, and he went when the Ottoman Empire then became the Turkish Republic, and then Ataturk came in and all this kind of stuff. They really went after him because he wouldn't do their bidding. So they went after him. So you can watch this movie on YouTube. Unfortunately, it's quite a bland movie, the way it's been edited and everything. So you really have to kind of pluck things from it to understand what's going on. But at the end of the movie, one of the things that he said is that my biggest worry for the people that are coming is that the enemy is no longer an outward obvious enemy anymore. It's an intellectual enemy. He goes, that's what I worry for the people that's coming. And the thing is, like, when you look at like the things that all these people faced in the 11th century, 12th century, 14th century, 16th century, 17th century, they're very physical things, right? Like the Mongolians are coming and they're attacking you with swords and all this kind of stuff. Like a lot of the pain that we're going through now, a lot of people are under this illusion. Well, we're living much better lives. Those people had famine, and those people had malaria, and they had leprosy, and all these things that they had to put up with. We've got hygiene, and we've got dishwashers, and we've got washing machines, we've got appliances, right? We've got cars, and we've got planes, and all this kind of stuff. So well, we're living much better lives than they are. And I say, yeah, but the man today has no dignity. He can't run his own household. He's completely, his psyche is completely broken. The man of the 12th century, the 13th century, he still at least had his dignity. The man today doesn't have any.
Well, I've got a brilliant line. To eat today like a peasant ate in the Middle Ages in England, you have to be a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
In order to afford organic food that has all the nutrients in it.
Yep.
Chickens that have run around in the countryside, laying eggs that actually have nutrition in them, to eat organic vegetables, etc., etc. Yeah. You have to be a millionaire, otherwise you can't afford it.
You look at a peasant's house from the 1890s, right? The house that he had, a peasant, I think it was in Germany, there's a picture of it going around somewhere. A house that a peasant had in 1890, you compare that to somebody who's absolutely loaded today, and that house is way more impressive. So much more land, so much more room, so much character. And then what we get now is a little box. This doesn't compare. The thing is, it's like we're castrated, we're emasculated, we're broken, but we can't even connect the dots. We don't even know we are broken, almost.
Because there's another control mechanism, which I touched on when we were talking about my cousin.
Like it's all abstracted away. So you can't even put your finger on it. You can't say, oh, this is the thing that's ruining my life, or this is the thing that's destroying my family.
Yes, you can.
I mean, we can. I'm saying.
Well, let's say it. The populace
the
needs to. It's not the banking system. It's the practice of usury, which the banking system does. That is the backbone of their thing. But it's riba, and the Muslims have somehow forgotten that, because some alims that were paid a lot of money said that no, here this is Sharia compliant. Boom, there, stamp fatwa.
Yeah. But but the thing is that we're conditioned to think, oh, the reason why the psyche is struggling today is because there's a supply chain crisis, or there's a job crisis, or there's a climate disaster, or there's all these 100 other things. The reality is the root cause of it all is riba.
It's all riba, and I actually put it out there into the world, and I'm actually going to do a live thing. I don't know when, but I'll just do it on Instagram or something, and just go live and say, tell me any problem with the world today, and I will show you, how it comes from riba.
You can trace every societal ill. You can trace it back to riba. Today.
Right?
Every one you can trace it back.
It's like that, and somehow because the ribowy nature of the system has infiltrated. I mean, you touching on the subject of healthcare. You know, it's infiltrated healthcare, it's infiltrated education, it's infiltrated how we conduct our businesses, it's infiltrated politics, it's infiltrated every single function of society. And so you can't avoid it. But everything is based on this system, which is unnatural. You know, and I always go back to the great American Italian poet Ezra Pound. He wasn't Muslim, right? But he understood the world that he was in. And in the 1930s, he defined usury as contra naturam, against nature. And it's been this thing that's been playing on my mind for a long time. And as I was preparing the stuff for my course, I was like, how can I show that usury is against nature? What is it about usury which is against nature? And so I did a little bit of my own personal research on it, and then like the answer just like, you know, came straight in my face. And it's that nature is balanced. Nature maintains equilibrium. If you read these books on rewilding, if you just leave a plot of land and you don't touch it, you don't farm it, you don't do anything, you just leave it, then what you find is that everything returns back to equilibrium, and the trees grow better, the plants grow better, there's more animals there, a deer will die, and that will bring, you know, wolves or dogs or birds of prey or whatever it is to eat the carrion that's left behind, and then that's going to create maggots, and the maggots are going to go into the earth, and that's going to bring more bugs and more things which the other animals can eat. And it keeps going like that. And so what happens over time...
Yellowstone National Park example, isn't it?
That's the one that I always use with the wolves, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's an interesting subject. You see, that one's very interesting on the subject of masculinity, because the wolves, they're not
the wolves are seen as the villain, but they're actually helping the ecosystem. But you can't see that. And this is what's taking place in society today. Anybody who shows any real masculinity in society today is spoken about like a wolf.
Well, my position is that what is needed today is the reintroduction of wolfman back into society.
What is your definition of wolfman? I want to know. Because people have this conversation about like what is. I mean, I don't know what the definition of masculinity is. I know what masculinity isn't, but I couldn't. If you asked me for a definition, I couldn't say this is what masculinity is. But when I see what masculinity isn't, that I can point out.
Well, I'm going to use an example, right? Which is, there's 2 points here. One, today, what you find is the use of Machiavellian principles from The Prince.
Okay.
And the use of Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Okay.
And all of these kind of ideas. If you look at Robert Greene and his 48 Laws of Power, etc., or his 30 Strategies of War, and you name it, it's using all of this war terminology and study and strategy, which is great, don't get me wrong, and transposing it onto the boardroom.
Now, in the boardroom, right? Yeah. Do you agree with that?
So what you? Well, I agree that it works for the kind of strategic functioning of high capitalism and corporations, and I think the strategies can be transposed. But for me, it's not even that it's not natural, is that what is the key element of war? And the key element of war comes back to a philosophical thing, which is man facing his death. And a man that has faced his death is not the same as a man that hasn't faced it. And I'm not calling for people to go out to war and to, I'm not saying that I wish it on men to go out there into war and face their death. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that historically the highest aspiration of man was to be this noble warrior, the greatest noble warrior. And nowadays the aspiration is to be the richest businessman.
Yeah.
And those things aren't the same.
No, absolutely not. And the others
because the richest businessman hasn't had to face that fear that is innate or is part of man, which is the fear of your annihilation, the fear of your death, the fear of what's on the other side.
You must know about like the what they call the male initiation, the culture of male initiation in like ancient civilizations, where they would like, like in that movie, like in 300, they send the kid out and he has to, he's like, I don't know, he's about to come of age. They always say, once he starts taking interest in women, when he starts to come of age, and then you send him out into the wilderness at night, and he has to face the wolf by himself, and he either comes back a man, or he doesn't come back at all because he's dead. It's one or the other. There are a lot of civilizations.
The other part of that, and this is like an extreme example, right? But in Sparta, when a child was born, it would be presented to the elders of the Spartan community, and they would look at it and they check it out and they say, okay, his legs are straight, his body's fine, it's like, it looks healthy, it's a healthy baby, okay, it's fine, boom. If there was any defects in the child, it was thrown into a well.
Oh wow!
It was that. So I mean, look, I'm not saying that one should do that. That's not the point. The point is that part of the Spartan culture, because they, in their ethos, it was like they had to be the best physically. If there was an inferior child born, it was killed, so that it wouldn't reproduce and it wouldn't, weaken the genetic coding of the Spartans.
Yeah. But I think like the thing that you talk about now is like the what I see in society as well is that the man's status is tied to, it's how much money he has. That's based on how much respect or dignity he gets. The more money he has, the more respect or dignity he has, right? The more people respect that individual. This guy's loaded, this guy's got the money, he's got the cars and all that kind of stuff. It's a material wealth that gives the man his place in society these days, which is why every man is chasing it. But the societies that you're talking about, it was his his nobility and his strength. And this thing's capitalism has just completely butchered this now.
And the thing is, I mean, that's not separate from having wealth.
Yeah, of course.
Because many of these, many of these princes, many of these knights, noble warriors, etc., they were also extremely wealthy. And there's nothing wrong with having the wealth.
No,
there's nothing wrong with having a Bugatti. If you can afford it.
That's not the ultimate goal. You know what I mean? It's not like having a Bugatti or having a Ferrari. That's not what makes you the man. That's what I'm saying. It's
absolutely not.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
it's become if you are the guy with the Bugatti, you are the guy with the Ferrari, then you are the man. If you are the guy with the businesses or whatever. And the thing is, like in the work that I've done, I've met a lot of businessmen and businesswomen. I've met hundreds, if not thousands, and I've met them in all phases. I've met them in successful phases, unsuccessful phases, right? Doing well, not doing well. I've seen all of it, and the masculinity aspect of that, and I'm like, no, it just, that doesn't make you more of a man just because your business is more successful. I have seen men whose businesses have become successful because they've become better men. I have seen that they've become more humble.
Yeah.
The business has shown them a mirror to themselves and everything. That's a different matter. It
well,
has made
somebody who's very rich. That shows that they're good at making money, but that doesn't show that they're a great person. And the two things are exclusive. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, most of society, unfortunately, sees that in a very similar way, especially the generation that comes before us. And even this generation, there's a lot of... A guy turns up in a Bugatti, immediately it commands respect, and a guy who turns up in a Fiat Panda is...
But that's nothing... That's nothing new.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back to ancient times, man rocked up on a certain stallion, and this is like the very best Arabian stallion. Is like, it commands respect. I mean, I think it's, I'm not entirely certain, but I think it mentions in the Quran, there's an ayah which talks about horses, and the horses are for you to ride, and I think it's horses are for you to ride, to go into war, and for adornment. It's something along those lines. It's like to beautify you. Because there's something in them, and there's nothing, and I've got absolutely nothing. I mean, not that there's nothing wrong with it. I think that it's part of. There is a thing that if you do have the wealth, then spend it, and spend it on the best things. you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think there's something wrong with, especially you get it in the Muslim community in certain cultural aspects, which is that you have a lot of money but you drive a Toyota because, you know, humble buy. But it's like, no, the Prophet ﷺ wore the best clothes, he rode the best horses, and he was the most generous. He didn't save, you know. And this is my counter to our dear aunties that we love. But, you know, when they say save, Prophet ﷺ never went to sleep without spending everything that he had.
And there's lots of stories about shuyukh, you know, that their pockets were empty before they'd even got home for the evening. You know, after they've done the madrasa and they've done those things, their pockets are empty. But you try living in that kind of world, you try living in that way in this world today, it's painful, very painful.
Well, the thing is you see, this is where the crossover comes. Because if you believe that you are the one who is providing for your family, if you believe that your work is the thing that's bringing you your rizq and is bringing you your income, if you believe that, then as far as I'm concerned, that's shirk. Because Allah is the one who's providing for you, and you can spend everything that you have, and tomorrow you will have more. If you trust and you know with absolute certainty that your Lord is going to look after you. And there's a wonderful thing that I was told. It was that when you were in your mother's stomach, did you worry about where your food came from? No, it came directly into your bloodstream. And then when you were born, did you worry about where your food came from? No, it came from your mother's breast. And then when you got a little bit older and you were running around, did you worry where your food was coming from? No, because you'd sit at the table and mother had prepared something, or someone in the family had prepared something for you. And you've lived your entire life up until this point in time, and you have been fed from before you even came into existence, right? Who do you think was feeding you? Right? Where was that provision coming from? Do you think Allah's going to stop feeding you now? No.